Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Hey, you citizens of the world. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of August 29th. And it gives me great pleasure to bring on my next guest. It's someone I'm getting to know. We're both members of, this is disclosure, we're both members of the steering committee of Network 49, which I got my little badge right up here somewhere. There it is. And we are a progressive outfit in the 49th Ward. We do work closely with the Democratic Party, but I think we're a little bit to the left.
Yeah.
And, that said, here we are introducing our friend, Sarah Burry. And good morning to you, Sarah.
Good morning, Michael James. How are you?
I'm good. You almost made it home, but you didn't. So you're sitting here on a beautiful street in Rogers Park in the comfort of your car.
Yes. You know, running for office means being in your car a lot, especially when you're running countywide. So this is just what we've got today. So.
Well, you're going to run for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District to be a commissioner. And, you know, we've had members of that body on before. We're living in kind of fragile and dire times. The president is challenging every black mayor in blue cities around the country. But we do think it's important to pay attention to other things too. And one of those, which certainly is influenced by federal budgets, I imagine, is our water and how we deal with sewage and water, et cetera, et cetera. So what does the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District do? What's it all about?
Yeah, so the MWRD manages storm and wastewater. So anything that goes down the drain in your house or the rain that comes down, especially when it's, you know, we're very familiar with the rain right now because it's been coming down in deluges. So anything from your drains and anything that goes down the drains outside, all go to the Water Reclamation District. And they're also the second largest landowner in Cook County, just after the forest preserves. And that's kind of a big deal to me. And then the other thing to know about them is they have a $1.7 billion budget. So it's definitely something that people should know about because your money is going here and a lot of the land is owned by them. So they have a lot of responsibilities that we don't really think about on a regular basis.
Is that water filtration set up outside near Navy Pier? Is that part of it? Or is that different?
So that's the crib. That's drinking water. And MWRD doesn't handle drinking water, just storm and wastewater.
Well, we got a lot of storm and wastewater these days because in certain parts of the city, there's been news lately about how the south side and certain neighborhoods are getting flooded over and over again. And even a building in Uptown at Wilson and Broadway, which had gotten rebuilt and done, it's an old building, they're having problems with water. Tell us a little bit about...
Well, so actually... Michael, I actually grew up on the Southwest side. And part of the reason why I'm running for this role is because I grew up in a house that flooded every time it rained. We used to measure how bad our flood was based on to which stair the flood got. And I remember pushing the sewage toward the drains. Like this is a real issue that people are facing. People are sending people on the Southwest side in a slightly different neighborhood than the one I grew up in. I grew up in Clearing. And it's folks in West Lawn that are suffering from massive flooding right now. And I'm getting videos from community members saying, what do we do? Like, what are we supposed to do about this? How can we get help with this? And so if you live in Chicago, make sure that you report your flood on the 311 app. And definitely there's a possibility that FEMA could help. But, you know, it's hard to depend on FEMA right now, considering the administration in the White House.
Well, so you've experienced flooding, and I imagine that that's one reason that has led you to running for this position. But there may be others. You're a political animal, so to speak, and you probably have a progressive view on things. How about sharing with our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself, where you grow up, where you went to school, what you're interested in, and how you got involved in progressive politics?
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that because some of the questions I get while I'm asking people for signatures are things like, do you believe in science? Do you believe in climate change? Are you pro-water or anti-water? And that's really interesting. It's really a sign of where we are in the world. So I actually was born in the same hospital as the new Pope. So that's exciting.
Right on.
And I grew up in Clearing, and I sort of hovered around that neighborhood for a while, Clearing and Garfield Ridge. I went to Chicago Public Schools, a local school for grade school, and then I went to Whitney Young for high school. And then, we were broke. So I went to Daly College for my first 2 years of college. And then I finished college at Roosevelt University. And all of those places had a message of equity and social justice. So I started picking it up very young. I also grew up in a house full of books. My mom would bring books in, and there was not really a restriction on what we could read. So me and my 4 siblings would fight over the books, who could read them next. And it ended up being whoever the next fastest reader was, which was never me because I was the baby. But eventually I got the books, and we put them all in the basement. And then the same water that watered my dad's garden outside went into our basements and destroyed all of our books. And eventually the very foundation of the home had to be replaced. So literally the house was going to crumble because of these floods. But I grew up in a house full of, values on words, but also one of my mom's big lessons was that you need to be careful and act with integrity, because there may become a point in your life where you realize that your name is all that you have. So I take that very seriously, and walking around with a form that's asking people to put my name on the ballot, that's a really big deal to me. There's a lot of honor wrapped up in making these promises to people. And I believe in that. So after college, I taught remedial writing to college students who had graduated from high school but weren't ready for college writing yet. And then after a few years of that, I went to law school in DC at American University. And I had a conversation with someone who said that he was studying space law. And I was like, well, that's silly. Why would you do that? And so
Studying what?
He was studying space law.
Space law.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 2008. I was like, why are you doing that? So we got into a conversation about water wars. So I went to one of my professors who happened to be an international environmental attorney. And after that conversation, I went to the registrar, I changed all my classes. I took every environmental law class they offered at my school. And I signed up for a master's degree in global environmental politics because I wanted to know the law, but also how the environment impacted people and how people interact with it. And it wasn't until, so while I was in law school, I interned for the DOJ, the EPA, the city of Chicago in their environmental law sections. But it wasn't until I got out and I was a fellow for the Alliance for the Great Lakes. I was their Del Bryson Water Quality Fellow, that I realized it was really the water that was what I was drawn to. The water was what I wanted to work on. But everything that I do sort of has this extra layer of being concerned with equity. So you were asking about like how I became political. When I was on the South Side, there wasn't really, it was just like the machine did what it did. But when I came back from law school and I moved up north, I started to see that there were like local people running, and I worked on a couple campaigns, including Maria Haddon's first campaign. And I worked
Alderwoman. Maria Haddon is our alderwoman, for those of you beyond the 49th.
That's right. And I was just like, the first time I met her, someone was like, you need to come meet this candidate. And I met her and I was like, yep, okay, she cares about the same things I do. And she cares about progressive values in the environment and like really is concerned about people. And so am I. And so do I. So I worked on her campaign. We also worked on Bring Chicago Home together. And most recently, I worked on Operation Swing State, sending people up to Michigan and Wisconsin to talk to folks about Kamala Harris and the other folks who are running as Democrats. So it's a lot like working on a campaign is a lot like working on a play where you have the beginning is a slow start and you're getting to know everyone and everyone really bonds. And then you get to this like climax that is the show, and then it's over and everybody goes away. And I used to do that. I used to volunteer with the theater And so it's sort of a natural transition into campaigns. But the first time that Trump was on the ballot and he was going against Hillary Clinton, I had bought all of this champagne. And I was stocking it, and my niece called that day. It was morning. The polls had barely just been open for an hour or so. And my niece called me, and she's a woman of color, and she's queer. And she said, "What's going to happen to us if he wins?" And I said, "He's not going to win." And I'm packing my champagne. I have so much champagne, Michael. I was throwing a party, and I haven't thrown a party since. But even before the results came back, I knew that I had to run for something on a local office on the local level, because it matters so much to people's lives. It can impact people so much. And it took me a matter of 10 minutes to realize that thing that I wanted to run for was the Water Reclamation District.
What will you do as a member of the Water Reclamation District if you are elected that stands out or differentiates you from some of the other candidates? I mean, there's a lot of good people who run for that office, and I probably are today still, but you are our neighbor and friend. So what are you going to bring to the job?
Yeah, I think it's important that the person who gets elected to this role is an environmentalist. It wasn't always the case that the MWRD was a place for environmentalists. It is often a place that folks go to retire or as like a springboard for other offices. And that's not why I'm doing it. I want to work on water. And I want to help people who have problems with flooding and things like that. First, I think it's important that there's an environmentalist. And I'm running for the 6-year term. And for the 6-year term, there are currently 3 environmentalists who are running that I know of.
How many people get elected?
3 people get elected. So you'll be able to go in and choose your favorite 3. And right now, as far as I know, there are 3 people who are environmentalists. So that's Precious Brady Davis, Ada Krell Sepulveda, and me. The person that I would like to replace is a nice lady. She's chair of the Moraine Valley Community College, and as someone who went to community college, I totally respect that. And as a former teacher, I totally respect the educational field. But she just doesn't have environmental experience, and I think that's really important. The other thing I bring to it is that I'm an attorney, and part of what the board does that people don't really think about is that they do things like they approve leases, because they're the second largest landowner in Cook County. They approve like workers' comp settlements. They approve contracts for things like cleaning supplies. And so a lot of it really has like a legal angle to it. So I think that would be helpful for me to be able to explain to people what the MWRD is doing, because I can understand what those things are. And then the third thing is I really want to focus on bringing people back into the agency in the first place. So during the pandemic, the MWRD realized that they could do remote comment, which is fabulous. They, like other agencies, have their meetings in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, in the middle of a neighborhood that doesn't have parking, which is pretty common for a government agency, right? So they did remote comment, which is amazing. But then they decided, after the pandemic was declared to be over, they decided that's a little too much democracy. And they took it back a little bit, and they made it so that people could submit comments and they would be read out loud during the meeting. And I think that already quiets community voice. But then even that was too much, and they took it back to where you could submit comments and it would go to the commissioners. And that's completely quieted community voice. So I think we need to bring remote public comment back, because we shouldn't require people to take time off of work to come to a meeting. That's wild. And also I want to have virtual office hours so that people can participate and come ask questions and get to know what's happening at the water rec. And I want to have meetings in communities. Like the number one lesson of my master's degree was to trust communities to know what they need and to meet them where they are. And I think it's really important that we do that. And every commissioner that is elected for this role represents all of the people in the whole district. They're not small. They're not like sub-districts like there are for like the Cook County commissioners. MWD commissioners represent the whole county, almost the whole
Oh,
county.
good.
But that means that I would represent, as someone who lives in Rogers Park, I would represent someone in Thornton or Orland or Hanover Park or the South or West Side. And I think it's important to spend time in those communities and get to know those communities and build relationships with them and their local leaders as well.
Sarah Burry, let's be clear here. You are running for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District for the 6th-year position. There'll be 3 out of all the candidates that the people who vote can pick. We encourage everybody to vote. Will you, if people want to know more from you and get involved, perhaps give us your email or your website. And then I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yeah, I do want to say that there is going to be 2 races for MWD. One is the 6-year race where you pick 3, and then one is the 2-year race where you only pick 1. So you're going to see both of those on your ballot. So just so people don't get confused. If you want to help, I do need 2 forms of help. We do need donations, obviously, because it's a county-wide race. And I also need help getting signatures. And you can sign up for either of those on the website, which is Sarah, SARAH, the number 4, waterrec.org. So SARAH, the number 4, WATERREC.org. And then you can email us at contact@sarahforwaterrec.org or you could also follow us on social. We're on both Instagram and Facebook at Sarah for Water Rec, just to keep it easy.
Okay, as we go out, can you give us a little insight into the impact of climate change on our water here in Chicago and our water reclamation procedures here in Chicago?
Yeah. So actually, the IEC just published something where they were talking about how someone introduced, I think it was Graciela Guzman, introduced a law that would help us transition people into Cook County or around Chicago who are climate refugees. Like, people are going to come here because we're in a good place. There aren't so many natural disasters. We have all this fresh water, and we need to prepare for that in terms of making sure the sewer doesn't get overwhelmed. Because when the sewer gets overwhelmed, people's basements get backed up and they release untreated sewage into our waterways, which obviously we want to avoid. So we need to get ahead of that. And the way that we do that is by creating a distributed network of green infrastructure in places that need it most. And that includes the locations, the neighborhoods that haven't been invested in the way they should have been.
That's good.
Yep.
I look forward to seeing you in the neighborhood, and we'll be talking to you before you know it. Awesome. That's Sarah Burry. She's running for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Everyone pay attention. She's a good person.